The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So what I'd like to talk about today is just a little part of what we chanted this morning in the Shushogi. And it's part I'd like to talk about is the four wisdoms. I've talked about it many times before, so this isn't going to be anything new and revolutionary, but as I understand it, the Shushogi actually comes from the Shobogenzo, and there's a couple chapters in particular. There's the one on ceaseless practice in the Shobogenzo, and it's a practice. My Japanese is terrible, but here we go. Bodhisatta Shi Shobo is the other one from the Shobogenzo, which Reverend Master Hubert translated that one as on the four exemplary acts of a bodhisattva. Okay, so the Shushogi comes from the Shobogenzo. Okay. So this morning we chanted the four wisdoms: charity, tenderness, benevolence, and sympathy are the means we have of helping others and represent the bodhisattva aspiration. These four means of helping others, you find various titles in different translations. It makes perfect sense. They're sometimes called the four wisdoms, four exemplary acts of a bodhisattva. They're sometimes called the four signs of enlightenment. I particularly like that one because we wouldn't think so. If you hear the word enlightenment, you think lights going off and some terribly deep understanding. Not terribly, a deep understanding, which happens. But these very basic things are actually often referred to as the four signs of enlightenment, and definitely they're called the four ways that a bodhisattva benefits beings. Personally, I was very relieved when I came across this teaching, to know that charity, tenderness, benevolence, and sympathy are what the Buddha considered wisdom and enlightenment to be. I thought, well, boy, I've got a chance here. It was a great relief because I could practice these four things. And with some work and effort, I could become better and better at manifesting them in my everyday life. Okay? And you all know, Zen practice is about practicing in your everyday life. Buddhism is about practicing in your everyday life, because if it's not practiced there, well, where do we practice it and who does it benefit? So these teachings are really grounded teachings. Okay? And we can do them. Yes, we come from wherever we come on them. We might be strong on one and weak on the other, but we can do them, and over time we can improve, and they benefit beings. And of course we're part of beings. Sometimes people say they benefits beings and they don't include themselves. Well, that's kind of silly. We're part of beings, and these things, when practiced, they tend to lighten our load and gladden our heart, which I think is a sign of something in our lives. So over the years, I've developed an interest and a curiosity, about the origin of Buddhist teachings. I like to see, where did this come from? Not that any person couldn't come up with an original expression of something, but usually there's it kind of goes back in time, and so the four wisdoms, I think they stand on their own as a teaching. You practice them and you see that they lead away from suffering, and they help beings. They benefit beings. And, those are pretty telltale signs that something is legitimate, good practice. Okay? But still, I was curious. And I knew that I think years ago I did a retreat on the Four Wisdoms, and I found some kind of link back to the time of the Buddha and his teaching, but I couldn't precisely find it. Okay. So recently I've been reading this book here, The Buddha's Teaching on Social and Communal Harmony, an anthology of discourses from the Pali Canon. So it's from the Pali Canon. It was translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi, and he compiled these various things. It in itself, takes things from different parts of the Pali Canon. Okay, it's kind of like the Shobogenzo and the Shushogi. Bhikkhu Bodhi translated the short piece that I was going to read for you from the Anguttara, probably not pronouncing that right, Nikaya. So it's the numerical discourses of the Buddha. If you're familiar with that, it's a grouping of teachings of the Buddha. All the teachings of one had one part to them, 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts, 6 parts. It goes way up. And it's got some really succinct teaching, and it's got more elaborate teachings in it. So in this book, what I came across was the 4 means of embracing others. I'll read that to you. It's very short. So the Buddha isn't addressing the monks, but I think this, as you will see, is obviously a teaching for everybody. Monks, there are 4 means of embracing others. What 4? Giving, endearing speech, beneficent conduct, and impartiality. These are the 4 means of embracing others. Giving, endearing speech, beneficent conduct, and impartiality under diverse worldly conditions, as is suitable to fit each case. These means of embracing others are like the linchpin of a rolling chariot. If there were no such means of embracing others, neither mother nor father would be able to obtain esteem and veneration from their son. But these means of embracing exist, and therefore the wise respect them. Thus they attain to greatness and are highly praised. Very short. Again, that's in the numerical discourses of the Buddha in the section of the 4s. Okay. So giving, endearing speech, beneficent conduct, and impartiality under diverse worldly conditions, that's pretty close to charity, tenderness, benevolence, and sympathy. And of course, when people translate, they find that a different word fits better for them, carries the meaning of it. And the ones that we are familiar with are charity, tenderness, benevolence, and sympathy. And it's interesting, Bhikkhu Bodhi puts this teaching of the Buddha in a chapter that he entitles The Intentional Community. So he's got different sections of this book, but this one was under this. And these things, when we look at them, are about intention, obviously. If we have these 4 things, we have the intention of doing them because they're beneficial to ourselves and others, well, that's great. It's a very good thing. And of course, there's a step beyond intention. There's actually the doing of it, which is what the crux of the matter is taking these things and making them part of our everyday life. Okay? The intentional community in Buddhism is the Sangha. Okay? Giving, charity, endearing speech, tenderness, beneficent conduct, benevolence, impartiality on diverse worldly conditions, sympathy. Well, they help make for a harmonious Sangha. We all know that term, the harmonious Sangha. Okay? Because that's what the Buddha envisioned, was a group of people that could live together and could help each other and benefit each other. That's what Reverend Master Jiyu envisioned about Shasta Abbey, a group of people that would come and practice together and help each other. And I think we all know that those four things, they make for harmonious Sangha. If we do those practices, if we take them beyond just the intention of doing them, but we actually practice them, they benefit each other. They benefit the Sangha. I will be so bold as to say they benefit our world. A harmonious world. We sure like to see it, But it's made up of people living harmoniously and then extending that out. And it's just not harmonious with themselves, but harmonious with other people. People that don't necessarily have the same belief that you have. Okay? In the last years of her life, Reverend Master Yu used to say repeatedly, she'd say, "You all are going to have to get along with each other when I'm dead." I mean, I heard her say that numerous times. We didn't always get along with each other. I mean, we know is one of the things that happens with people. We don't always get along. But she kept saying this, and I thought, well, that's true. We need to do that. And then I also thought, well, maybe I better do that now. Because, as we know, what we do now will shape our future. Okay? I thought it was time to start getting along now. I'm not saying I was always successful at it, but it was more than just an intention. Okay? As we know, to be and stay harmonious takes a great effort. It's not easy. It's easy when everything is going right. We can all roll with that. And that's good, that's wonderful. But then when the rough spots come, what do we do? Well, that's when we practice. Even more do we put our intention into practice. We're all different. We have histories. We have likes and dislikes. But I think we know that we have more in common as human beings than we have that divides us. No matter who we are, okay? Well, I mean, we need food, we need shelter, we care about our families. We care, okay? We all want safety. We want to be treated with kindness, compassion, generosity, and respect. I don't know that there's a human being who really doesn't want that. Okay, in our heart of hearts, we know that this is the best way to treat other beings. It's also the best way to treat ourselves. So the Buddha says that these four means of embracing others are like the linchpin of a rolling chariot. Well, chariots, kind of date way back. I don't know a lot about chariots, but Buddha liked these analogies of the wheel, okay? And the linchpin is just actually that thing on the outside of the wheel that goes through the axle that makes sure that the wheel doesn't come flying off. And actually, if you look in the dictionary for the meaning of linchpin, as a general phrase, it means anything serving to hold together the parts of a whole. Okay? And I think we could say that the four means of embracing others is what holds the spokes of the eightfold path. It's what holds it on the chariot, this vehicle that we are able to move through life in. This is. So personally, as I say, I don't know that much about chariots, and maybe I have some karma there. I don't know, but I just don't. Other than Ben-Hur, right? But I have worked on garden carts. Okay, and garden carts. So you got your axle, that goes under the garden cart. The wheels go on the axle. You drill a hole in the axle, and you put, what do you call those things now? Hold on, I got it here. Cotter pin. Okay, cotter pin is like a lynch pin. Yes, and cotter pins are just these little pieces of wire that you put through that hole, and then you bend them up with the pliers. And it's actually, when you think of the work that a garden cart does around here, I mean, the loads of wood that a garden cart carries, the weight, those pins do not bust. You know, so something that is the lynch pin, the cotter pin of something, must be incredibly strong. So I would venture to say that these 4 ways of embracing beings must be very strong, you know, incredibly strong. Yeah, you just don't need a big cotter pin. There's little bits of wire. Okay, so these 4 means of embracing others, they're not complex, they're not esoteric, they're not only doable by the special, enlightened people. Okay, they're not really something. Well, they're for you and me. Okay, today and now. They're not something for the future when we have it all together. Because the future when we have it all together, that's very uncertain. It's really uncertain. We don't know. You know, we don't know if we got that. We don't know what that's going to look like. And you know how it is if you don't work on something with the tools that you have, it often gets worse, and then it's harder with the tools that you have. You need more tools. Okay. Right. So we all know the benefits of giving and receiving. It's a basic human thing. Okay. I don't think that we ever graduate from generosity as a practice and then we do the higher practices, you know. I think generosity, as are the other 3 of these, means are actually the higher practices. Okay. I think that the more one does this practice, the more generous one becomes. You know, and generosity, there's just many ways to be generous. But the most basic one is not holding too tight to a self. You're kind of expanding our horizons. And then we see, oh, we're just like that person. Or, oh, they could use some food. Oh, you know. The Buddha said that if even if it were the last morsel bit of our food, last mouthful of our food, that we would not eat without sharing it with someone else if there was someone to share it with. Obviously, we don't. You know, you got your last morsel. You don't have to run around finding someone to share it with. But if there was someone to share it with, you would share it with them, even if it were your last morsel. That's how deep generosity goes within our hearts. Stinginess, which is kind of the opposite of charity or giving or generosity, dana, well, it makes us tight, you know, and grumpy. It's what it does, you know. We know that if we're honest with ourselves. Generosity, on the other hand, giving, on the other hand, it opens the heart. Okay? There's just something about it. Great Master Dogen says, to behold all beings with the eye of compassion and to speak kindly to them is the meaning of tenderness. So by and large, we communicate in life through speech. I know we communicate through, you know, body language and other stuff. No, that's, you know, for sure. But speech is a pretty big human thing, you know. And we know the benefit of tender, kind, and endearing speech. We know it for ourselves. You know, when people talk to us in that way. I mean, if we're fortunate, we grew up with some of that with our parents. And it, you know, it's a good thing. It puts beings at ease and helps them be peaceful, and then also makes them reciprocate in the same way, with speech that is tender, kind, and endearing. When I was preparing the Dharma talk this morning, someone called me during the Dharma talk, and I was slightly appalled at my tone of voice after, because I had to get out of the chair, I had to stop preparing, and I had to answer a question. But I actually, in retrospect, hindsight, which of course is an exact science, we know that, we don't need to be that way. We could have just said, yes, please do this. Oh, by the way, I'm preparing my talk, and if you cannot call me, that's a kindness to me. Okay, but we don't have to get all upset. I didn't get terribly upset, but I could have done a better job. Some of us have a very quick mind and quick mouth. There's that disease called foot and mouth disease. Sometimes we put body and mouth disease. It's so extreme, but it's a thing that some of us have partly because we have a very quick mind. Maybe we're very intelligent, possibly. I don't know, but and before we know it, we come out with something that actually we could have let pass, or that there was a better way to say it. So it helps if we have this thing that happens with us, so it helps us to restrain ourselves. Okay? Meditate for just a second or two. It doesn't have to be very long. You don't have to zip the lips, but just meditate for a second or two and ask ourselves, is this a really good thing to say? Or is this a really good way to say it? And of course, if we blow it with people, which we do, we can just go back to them and say, I'm sorry. That came out all wrong. I could say it in a better way. We don't have to get into the conditions under which we said it, tell our whole life story. We just say, this is, okay, there's a better way to do it. And restraint, as we all know, takes practice, but it's well worth doing. On the other hand, if we don't say anything all the time, I was a very strange child. I would go to school, on the way to school, I would say, I'm going to say 10 words today. And that's all I do. It's just, I don't know why. I don't know what I was doing, but it wasn't very helpful. I look back and think, God, I'm embarrassed about my, it got better over time. Some of us are shy, or don't show much emotion, or, men of my dad's generation, they didn't say a lot. It's just, but my dad, for interestingly, he would kiss you on the lips, because it's just, that was from his Lithuanian. That's what they did. They showed him, that's. And I thought it was actually quite beautiful, and it actually said a lot. Okay, but not saying anything isn't the answer. It's just bringing our speech to something that is more skillful, and more tender, more generous, more kind. Okay, it's a good thing. Dogen says, whenever one speaks kindly to another, our face brightens and our heart is warmed. Tenderness can have a revolutionary impact. And there's something about that when we know, that was a good thing. That was okay. It's good to do it that way. We don't pat ourselves on the back excessively, but it brightens the heart. Okay, beneficent conduct, benevolent action, creates wise and skillful ways of helping beings. We can help beings by the way that we live our lives. Okay? It isn't about converting people. We're going around and changing people, but we can help by the way that we live our lives. I think the greatest teacher in my life has been the example of someone who lives a perceptual and compassionate life. Okay, that's just really been the thing that impresses me, because people are walking the talk, But we can do this. We can help others. I mean, it isn't a matter of going around saying, well, how can I help others today? Or it's just, all these natural things open up in our lives. And we do it by, our professions, our volunteering. The whole idea of a right livelihood is really basic to Buddhism. It's part of that Eightfold Path. It's held in by that linchpin. Okay? But we can do things that help beings. And the nice thing about Buddhism is all kinds of things help people. Years ago, there was a retreat here, and I don't know, it was a question and answer time or whatever, but one of the people at the retreat said that they felt kind of bad because they were a business person. And everybody else was a help in the helping professions. And, they just felt kind of bad that they were a business person. And I thought about it and I said, if you're a good, honest, helpful business person, it's really great. You know how it is when you call someplace, or maybe it's use the computer today, but if someone's helpful, as opposed to abrupt and having a bad day, it makes a difference. I mean, in Mount Shasta, we have Norm at Ace Hardware. Norm is a person who's worked there since whenever, and it's because he's really helpful. He doesn't make you feel stupid if you go in there. He helps you. He helps you find things, figure them out. They have him his name outside the building. It says Norm with all the other things that. Hey, because he's a real asset, and it's just an ordinary thing, a hardware store person, but they make a difference. Okay. So the Buddha calls the fourth means impartiality under diverse worldly conditions. So the fourth of these means. Impartiality is about not favoring one side more than the other. So it's about living without prejudice or bias under diverse worldly conditions. Okay? Very good practice, to be able to be impartial, not to be pushed around by your likes and dislikes or the way you'd like things to be, as opposed to the way they are. Impartiality, it's not this kind of neutral zone where we're not involved, but we're involved in a way that isn't favoring this over that all the time. It's able to see bigger than that. Okay? Great Master Dogen calls this fourth means of embracing others sympathy. Sympathy in the dictionary is a sameness of feeling, an affinity between persons, harmony, accord, the ability to appreciate another's feelings, emotions, or thinking. And I think impartiality and sympathy, although they're kind of different words with some slightly different meanings, but they're very complementary. Okay, they complement each other. If you're impartial in the way that the Buddha is talking about, you're probably going to be sympathetic. If you're sympathetic in the way that Dogen talks about it, you're probably going to be impartial in the way that you view things. So, and they're really important things because they take us beyond ourself. Impartiality and sympathy. We're not just stuck with the way we see things, our feelings, our emotions, our stuff. You see, it's a bigger world. There's all these things out here. And I think we also see that we're not that different. So why we should, other beings treat that in that way. So this whole word embracing is a very interesting word. Actually, the first word in the dictionary under the meaning of embracing is hugging. Okay? Then you've got accepting and including. Okay? Well, Mount Shasta is I think world famous for its hugging. It is. I mean, that's the way people greet each other. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's sometimes slightly awkward for us as monks, It's not that we don't, in Mahayana we the monks hug a bit. I mean, but we tend to gasho, but we can hug, but we don't go around hugging everybody. Okay, that's not our. Okay, and don't get me wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with hugging, but I think there's a deeper expression of embracing than physically hugging, and I think that's the accepting and the including, okay? Seeing that we are not separate from others. That's the deeper meaning there, okay? So see those when you hug, too, those meanings, okay? Because it's really about that, it's a terrible phrase, but spiritual hugging, which is not physically contacting at all, but it's that including and seeing that we are not that separate, okay, from others. Reverend Master Ji used to say that the Shushogi contains everything you need to know about Buddhist practice. It's got the precepts, it's got the four wisdoms, and then it talks about gratitude. Okay? And you heard part of that this morning. These are very simple practices in many ways, okay? But I think they're also deceptive and elusive, because we don't always do them. We're doing other things, okay? And if we think that an awakened mind is something other than those, okay, good luck. I think an awakened mind is those things, okay? And I think that, in fact, they are revolutionary in what they cause, because they bring beings together and don't push us apart. Okay? And we don't need more pushing apart in this world. Okay? The trick is, we have to do the daily practice of doing these things. So this teaching of embracing other beings, of the four wisdoms, of the four signs of enlightenment. It's really about putting them into practice. And we just have opportunities all day long. So that's where we got to do it. And that's your Dharma talk for today. Thank you. Thank you.